Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to the live demo of the Well-Led Practice or the Well-Led Provider platform, hosted by me, Dr. Claire Sieber, practicing GP and also Chief Executive of the Well-Led Practice. Good afternoon. I'm going to take you through a couple of slides first to show you the features of our platform and what you can get from it, and then I will take you over to our platform live and show you how you actually interact with it in real time, both from the point of view as a manager or a senior person in your organisation, but also from the point of view of any of your staff members who interact with it by, for example, filling in surveys. We have a team at the Well-Led Practice that help our practices and PCNs to get the most out of the platform. So if you were to use our tool, then you'll probably meet these people in due course. They've also helped to curate it and build it. So we've tried to make sure it's as relevant to general practice and PCNs as possible. We got me, of course, a GP, and we're also joined on our team by Dr. Ketan Bhatt, who's a current GP partner, former PCN clinical director, and he wears many other hats like many GP partners do. We also have a former practice manager on our team, Gary Hughes, and we also have a former CQC inspector, Gabby Ashton, and she is the one that's made sure that our platform, as well as helping you with your leadership and team development, also means that you're ticking all of the CQC well-led boxes at the same time. And I mustn't forget Oscar Matthew, the co-founder and co-CEO of the platform, who comes from an academic and healthcare facilitation point of view. So he's the one that's curated our library of evidence and expert-led exercises and guidance to help your team when it comes to working on the areas that you choose to develop in. So that's who we are. And the reason that we suggest you might like to use the Well-Led Provider platform is that, as I mentioned with the CQC, if you use our platform, you're more likely to score good or outstanding in Well-Led because you will be making sure that you're covering all of the elements in Well-Led, providing the evidence that you're doing it if you're doing it already. And if you're not doing it already, we give you the exercises to do to then show that you are doing it. And we have action plans on there as well that you can populate, and everything's downloadable so you can then upload it to whatever portals you might use for the CQC point of view. Of course, it also improves your teamwork by not only improving the development of individuals professionally within the team, but the team as a whole, and therefore also helps with recruitment, retention, staff morale, all of those things that we know have a knock-on effect if your team is working well. And it also helps your leaders to become better leaders in their own right, and also a better leadership team overall. And of course, that makes your practice more sustainable, more resilient, more likely to be profitable, and patient outcomes, of course, then flow from that. What our platform specifically offers you as a practice or a PCN is the opportunity to do an organisation-wide review of how you're doing with your leadership and your team, and how you're doing against all of those CQC well-led boxes. We also have individual reviews on there for everyone in the practice team, and that's a strong sort of founding principle of ours, that we believe that everyone in a practice team, no matter how junior and whether you're non-clinical, you should still be able to access the same amount of professional development support as somebody like, for example, the senior partner. So we also have individual developmental 360s for everyone in your practice, which a lot of our practices use as part of an annual appraisal system. And those individual reviews are benchmarked against everyone else in the same group of staff members as them. So, for example, if you were to do one on a GP partner, then they will get their scores and also get an idea of where they fit compared to all of the other GP partners in our database that use it. And as I mentioned before, we also have lots of CQC action plans, reflected logs, and how-to guides so that you can actually show the CQC that you're doing this work and that it's become embedded and it's part of your everyday practice. We have about 80 PCNs at the moment who have benefited from using the platform, and that's their core network practices as well. And we have a successful list of rather high-profile clients that have used the founding platform to the Well-Led Provider. So that's organisations such as Imperial and King's, the UKHSA, previously known as Public Health England, are active users of the founding platform behind this. So let me talk you through the review process a little bit before I actually then move on to the platform and show it to you. And I'll take the example of a practice level review. So what we envisage happening is that a leader of the practice, whether that be a practice manager or a partner, creates a practice review. And this generates a couple of links, which are then given to that individual to send out to everyone in the practice. There's one link that gets sent out to everyone in the leadership team of the practice, whoever you define that as being, and then another link which goes to everyone else in the practice team. And those members of staff will then click on those links and be invited to click on smiley faces in the main, although there is the option for them to add free text if they wish, to answer a series of questions. Questions that we know are important to ask if you want to get a feel for how the team is doing or how the leadership is doing, and also questions that we know that specifically the CQC are going to ask you and ask you to provide evidence of. So it's almost better, if you like, to get ahead of the CQC and ask those questions to your staff yourselves, then wait for them to come in and ask them on the hoof during an inspection. Once enough responses are generated, the person who created the review in the first place will be able to go back on the platform and see the numbers ticking up, and then download and access what we call their review or their report, which shows all of the data that we've gathered from that survey, comparing the opinions of the leadership team with the opinions of the rest of the practice staff, which is a useful exercise in itself, and also comparing, if it's a practice that's done it, to the other scores that the practices in our database have also got. So you get an idea of where you're at. And if you're doing well, then great, that's excellent evidence to show the CQC that you're well led. There normally, however, is some areas that are highlighted on the review that give you an idea of where you might want to make some changes and improvements and development from. And in that case, we don't then leave you high and dry. For example, by saying, oh dear, it appears like in some team meetings, there are some strong voices and some people feel unable to speak against those. We then give you exercises, those ones that I talked about that have been curated by Oscar and his team, to then go away and work on. These are group exercises or individual exercises. Some are 20 minutes long, some are 3 hours long, that you can then go away and do to help improve in that particular area. You can reflect on how that's gone. And then, of course, you're able to then re-review once you've done some developmental work to hopefully show that things have improved, and then re-review again to show that things have become embedded, completing the cycle and importantly, completing what the CQC expects you to do. You're not just expected to ask, you're expected to make improvements based on what you find and then show that those improvements have become embedded. So I'm going to stop sharing that and then share with you what the platform looks like in real life and take you through how you would use it. Just bear with me 1 second. Here we go. So this is our practice platform, and hopefully you can see this. This is our practice platform, and we do have a mirroring PTM platform as well, but I'll show you the practice one as they're both kind of similar. So as I talked about, we have this whole library of guidance and exercises and slide decks for you to use at your own leisure, but also for you to use specifically once you've identified a developmental need. But it's there and it underpins the whole platform. And if you buy our product, then you can have as much access to this as you want. It's there for you to dip in and out of. And some leaders feel confident enough and have enough insights into what's going on in their team that they're able to just to do this and go through it and pick things to do, whereas other people feel that they want to do some diagnostic work first and do one of our reports. But let me show you an example of what it looks like. So under each of these categories, we have subheadings. Let's look at the first one, for example. Under setting direction, we've got objectives clarifying, setting goals, increasing engagement in the team, and working on transparency. And if you were to click on any of those, what you then get is an overview of what we know and what the academics that have built this for us know and understand about how we need to clarify objectives and why we need to clarify objectives. Evidence-based wherever possible with this sort of science, if you like, with links if you want to read further about it. So that's an example of what that looks like. And then the exercises here, these are the ones, remember, for clarifying objectives, are simple exercises either for your team or an individual that our facilitators have put on there, ones that they would do themselves if they were coming to an away day to help you, for you to then have a go at yourselves. And we give you an idea in advance of how long these are going to take you to do. So that's what each of those subheadings in our library of guidance looks like. But let me show you what you would be doing if you were, say, a practice manager or a PCM manager, and you wanted to create a review to get a snapshot of where you're at, not just in terms of your team and your leaders, but in terms of CQC well led as well. You go to our Get Started page and you decide whether you wanted to set up a practice one or an individual one. Remember, there's no limit on how much or little you can use the platform when you have a subscription to it. So you say that you wanted to set up a practice review. You then give it a name, which would probably be the name of your practice and perhaps the date that you're doing it or the month that you're doing it in. You say what kind of review you want to create. You're going to create a practice one, and you click Set Up, and that's all there is to it. You'll automatically receive an email with this very information in it, but it's there right there for you to use now. So these are the two links that it gives you, a link to send to everyone in your wider leadership team and a link to send to everyone else in the practice. And we've also given you some text that you can put in the email to these people alongside the link. So you really need to think as little as possible, because we know that you don't have time. In fact, we know you have minus 50 hours of time. So we've tried to make this as easy as possible for you by doing as much of the work yourself. So the idea is you copy and paste the text, you'd send those people the link and they'd know what to do with it. They'd also know what to do with it because as part of our package, we offer to onboard all of your staff and do a sort of launch session for you with one of our team members, particularly Gary, whose photo I showed you at the beginning. So let's say you were a receptionist and you'd received the email with the link. This is what you would get when you click on that link. Click on that link that's come in the email. Thank you for completing this. This is anonymous. And like I said before, it's a series of smiley faces. And this is designed to take 5-10 minutes absolute max for a member of your staff to complete because they don't have time, like we said. And also quite a lot of people are used to doing surveys and perhaps bored of doing surveys. So we've tried to make it quick for that reason. Sadly, there's no way to get around the CQC well led without getting feedback from your staff, and I don't know how you could do it other than doing a survey. So your member of staff will work their way down the questions and think about how they feel working in your practice. Am I clear about the practice's vision, value and strategy? Am I positive and proud to work here? Absolutely. Am I asked for my opinion? Maybe I could be asked more. Do we share moments of lightness and humour together? Absolutely, yes, we do. Now, that one is a good example of one that the CQC don't ask. I don't think the words lightness and humour appear in their single assessment framework anywhere, but we know, our academics know, that that's a really important marker of whether a team is doing well or not. So that's why we ask it. They'll keep working their way down. Is everyone treated equally, including those with protected characteristics? Yes. That is specifically lifted from the CQC well-led framework. And they'll keep making their way down. There are some interesting questions. So I'm trying to think of one, for example, now. We plan well. I'm clear about who my line manager is. I'm not micromanaged. I feel inspired. When the leaders say they will do something, I'm confident that they will do it. Performance management happens across the board, even for people who are in senior roles. I feel respected and valued. No one's too dominant in discussions. When there's a mistake that's been made, I feel confident it's going to be managed in the right way, etc., etc. The other thing you'll notice on this survey is that staff are invited to tick any particular area, as many as they want, or indeed they can tick none, that they think is a specific area that you should be focusing on as a practice and as a leadership team. And I'll show you what that looks like when you get the report out of the other end. So that's an example of what somebody might tick. They're also invited, if they want, although they don't have to put in any free text around what they think you're doing well at as a practice and what you could potentially do better with. And then they simply click submit and off it goes. Thank you for completing this confidentially. And what you would then get as the team leader is in your review dashboard, you will start to see the responses ticking in. You'll see at the moment we've only got one response. As soon as there have been 3 or more responses, you'll be able to open your review, but it will keep populating as it goes, as more responses come in, and it stays as a sort of live review on the platform, but you can download it at any point if you want to. And here's a sample of what you then get out at the other end as a team leader or a practice manager. So you get an overall score based on how you've scored across the board according to all of the other practices in our database. So this is the fairly good review. You get an idea of how many people have actually filled it in. So in this sample, there are 5 members of the leadership team who've completed it and 13 other people. So you may know whether that's enough, or you may think, actually, I need to wait for more people and I need to send some little reminders. We then direct you through to the expert guidance and just remind you of its existence. And we also have a huge team leaders guide to help people who've never done one of these before, or maybe have done one before, but never then taken the next step and actually discussed it at a management level and then decided what to do about it. So there's a whole guide there about how to facilitate a conversation, how to raise something that might be a bit difficult. And we give you a case study worked through to help you as much as we possibly can with it. And then we tell you how to use the report, such as make sure you do something about it, tell everyone what you're doing, and make sure you complete an action plan so you can show that you've learned from it and made changes as a result. And this is what you get in terms of the data out of the other end. So all of these statements here align with the questions that you asked your leadership team and you asked the rest of your staff. The first column shows you how your leadership team have rated yourselves in a particular area. So for example, with this one, the leadership team thinks that you do very well in terms of having fun times together. And the final column shows you how everyone else in the practice has scored on that matter. So the practice team still think actually you do share lightness and humour as well together, but maybe not as strongly as the leadership team think, which might be an interesting takeaway point. Anything that's in a green circle is something that's in the top 10% of our database. And equally, as you'll see down here, anything that's got a red circle around it is something that's in the bottom 10% of our database. And that's an interesting one to draw out there about line management roles and responsibilities. This is often an area that we see coming up as something that needs a little bit of work on. Here, the practice leadership team think there isn't an issue, that everything's going well. And we know that the average in our database is fairly high, but what we can see is that the rest of the practice staff seem to think there is a big issue with line management roles and responsibilities. So that's something that you can start to tease out in your conversations. So there's all that data for you to work through. We then summarize what you scored highest on, because it's important to note that these sorts of things will give lots of positives from it as well, and certainly positives that you can show off to the CQC with. We tell you what you feel you've scored highest on in terms of the leadership team and what the rest of the practice have scored you highest on, and then vice versa, what you've scored yourselves lowest on and what the rest of the practice staff have scored yourselves lowest on. You might pick out similarities or they might be very different, but again, that's an interesting thing to start a conversation from. You'll also remember that in the questionnaire that I showed you, there was the option for practice staff to click on any area that they thought was a priority for development. And this basically tallies up all of those votes. It tells you what your leadership team voted as the priority areas and what the rest of the practice team said were the priority areas. So again, interesting to compare and contrast. But also, if you have a few developmental areas that come out of this and you don't know where to start, I would recommend starting with whatever the practice staff have given the most number of votes to. So you can truly say that you're listening to them, not just in terms of what they want you to do, but what they want you to focus on first. I think that's a really helpful thing to see. And these links, if you were to click on them, they take you through to the specific area of our expert guidance that links to that particular question that was asked. So you don't need to then go rummaging through that library and find an exercise that fits in with, for example, improving the balance of voices in discussions. We send you right to it. But of course, you're welcome to rummage through and find other bits that interest you. But again, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you. And then finally, our review finishes off with the free text that your practice staff put in there about what you think your strengths are and what you think they think the weaknesses are and the areas for improvement. And again, that's split down between the leadership team and the rest of the practice staff. Now, I will show you what would happen if you were to do an individual review, because those are things that are quite popular as well on our platform, particularly the practice manager individual review. I think practice managers find it really helpful to use these for their appraisal because it's something to hang the discussion from. And often practice managers are being appraised by their partners who are not practice managers and don't really have much of an idea of what a practice manager is doing. And so this can help make the conversation useful, to be honest. So if I was a practice manager, I'd set it up. I'd call it probably my name and the date, and then I'd say, right, I'm setting up a practice manager 360. Same sort of process. Again, one link to send to everyone who you work with and whose opinion you'll value. And then the other link is one for you specifically to click on to do an assessment of yourself. And again, we've given you the text to send to other people so that you don't have to compose a whole email around it. You can just do a bit of copy and pasting to save time. And this is what you would get in terms of the self-assessment to do. So this is you assessing your leadership and team working skills as a practice manager. And you go down with the same kind of thought process in mind as I showed you with the other review. Do I work with a clear vision and values? Do I require a high standard of myself? Do I prioritize? Am I visible? Am I inspiring? Do I do what I say I will? Am I organized? Am I able to delegate? Do I make sure that line management is clear? Do I listen well? Do I encourage that humor that we know is so important? Am I conscious of staff well-being? Do I have a can-do attitude? Do I take responsibility? You get the feel of it. And again, as well as doing the smiley faces, you're invited to click any areas that you think are a priority for development. You submit it at the end with or without the free text and off it goes. This one has just prompted me to say that I haven't really done many ticks. Am I sure I want to submit the form? Which I am. And there you have it. And this is an example of a practice manager review that you would get out at the other end. Again, once you have 3 or more contributors to your survey. We have an individual guide to help people navigate doing a 360, because not many of us have actually done one. And it's just useful to have a guide that helps you through it, talks you through the natural feelings that you will have both before and during doing it, and who you might want to lean on to support you through the process. And much like the practice review, we separate out the data for you so you can see so you can be reminded of how you scored yourself. And then you can see how everyone else in the practice, or whoever it was that you sent it to, views you. And again, you can do comparing and contrasting. So this particular practice manager, she doesn't think she works well with external organisations, maybe, so that's the PCN or the ICB, but actually her staff don't seem to have a problem with that at all. So she's probably being a little bit hard on herself there. I say herself, it could just as easily be a gentleman as well. And then in our database, we give you the averages of all practice managers who've completed one of these. So again, that's great appraisal fodder. You can show whoever it is that's appraising you that you're scoring above average compared to everyone else in our database, and they should give you a pay rise. And much like before, we tell you what you've scored highest in and lowest in, and what the other people have scored you highest and lowest in, giving you what the priorities are that people have voted for and what you've voted for as a reminder, linking you through to the expert guidance, and then giving you some of the free text to work through. So that is what the platform has to offer you. I'll just go back to my slide deck now, just to finish off this demo. I'll just finish off by running through the prices with you. If it will ever load. Here we go. So most of our practices buy it either at a practice level, or all of the practices club together to buy it for all of the practices in the PCN plus the PCN itself, which then means that the PCN in its own right gets access to our PCN platform, which has on it PCN level reviews benchmarked against other PCNs, individual 360s for the clinical directors, the PCN managers, and the R staff, for example. If you're buying it at practice level, it's between 15 and 20p, depending on list size, as you can see here. So it makes sense if you can to buy it at a PCN level. And when you buy it for a year, you get unlimited access for the whole year, dipping in and out as much as you want in terms of the expert guidance, doing as many or as few practice and individual reviews as you want. So we do encourage practices to use it with all of their staff and do a number of reviews over the course of the year. We find that practices do between one every 3 months and one every 6 to 12 months, depending on how stable they are and how much improvement work they've got to be doing. And as I said right at the beginning, our team will also support you to get the most out of the platform. So we do wrap a little bit of a professional service around the product, and we will onboard all of your team. We will then also do a kind of launch session for all of the practice, and we will then check in with you quarterly to make sure you're getting on top of it and you're working towards your developmental needs. And if you need any help, we're there to help you. We have a more intensive offering for practices who feel that they're going to need some away day sort of support and some more intensive support than just a quarterly check-in. And we also offer a more intensive CQC product and provide you, as well as having the platform, we provide you with a mock inspection of all of the CQC domains, not just well-led, and that's done by Gabby, our team member who's a former CQC inspector and does mock inspections for a living, probably does them in her sleep. I think most people would refer to that as a nightmare, but she loves it, and it's great that somebody loves it because someone needs to help us do it. And she will then support you throughout the whole year as well. So she'll help you develop an action plan and then check in on you to make sure that you're working towards that, and therefore whenever the inspection does happen, you'll be ready to go. If you'd like to do a free mini sample of your own leadership to see how you are doing, that doesn't go anywhere except to you, and you don't need to give us your email address to do it, then feel free to either click on this link or scan the QR code and have a little go for yourself. It's got a similar user experience to our platform, so you'll do some smiley faces and it will give you a free exercise from our platform to go away and do based on how you rated yourselves. So that's worth doing. And if you would like to give us some feedback on the demo, because we need to be open to feedback and we do read it all and we try really hard to make improvements based on it. Or if you'd like to ask a question, then feel free to complete the feedback form and stick that stuff on there, and we will try and get back to you personally. In fact, we will get back to you personally and answer your question. And I don't believe I've seen any questions in the chat. So all that's left for me to say is thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this useful. I hope you now understand a little bit better what our platform is all about. We do offer a 14-day free trial, so feel free to just email us or contact us on LinkedIn or through the website, and you can get that free trial started. If you would like a personal demo with me, because there's specific areas that you want to talk about in your practice and whether our platform can help with those, then just shout out. I do personal demos all for free. Just keep in touch, basically, and it's good to have met you all today. Bye.